So I mean, there's a culture piece there that was, something to adapt to. And then the last one I think you mentioned is, are we doing a good job? Well, there's work to be done, I would say. You talked about interesting proactive and reactive, which I think is huge. I spent a lot of time discussing that because every CISO, every company says, I want to be proactive. I want to stop things before they happen. And few, I won't say none, but very few actually want to do what it takes to be there. They all say that because it is the right thing. But ultimately, it's very hard to spend money on a thing that's very hard to measure. It's much easier to measure reactions. How long did we used to get breached and it took 3 days to resolve it. Now, thanks to our technologies and processes and accesses, we can do it in 12 hours. Wow, we really cut down our breach time, by whatever that is, 60 hours, 75% time, whatever it is. There's lots of metrics on the back end of bad things already happened. There's not a lot of metrics on, hey, we spent $2 million on intelligence last year and we didn't get breached. So what do we use it for? I try to tell people with Intel, you can't think of it like endpoints and firewalls and some of those technologies that spit out amazing metrics. I think of it like health insurance or physical security at a bank. If I'm at a bank and we have 12 security guards and 5 cameras and all this stuff, and in 5 years we don't get robbed, should we cut our security? Like, we're obviously wasting money. Nothing's happening. There's no threat. No, nobody thinks that way. Everybody knows the cost of doing business in banking is security. In health insurance, if I don't have I haven't had a heart attack, knock on wood, my whole life. I have health insurance. Am I just going to dump it? Oh, I'm healthy. I'm sure I'll be fine forever. No, it's inevitable. I'm going to need health insurance. And the truth is, in cyber, it's inevitable that bad things are going to happen in an interconnected world. So I tell people we got to figure out a way to invest in it. There's a lot more work to be done on how to measure value. But I tell them either invest now or go ahead and buy lots of cryptocurrency and update your resume.
Hey, what's going down, everyone? This is Dr. Erik Huffman from the Mic Club, and I have the honor and the privilege to have the AJ Nash with me. How you doing, sir?
Hey, I'm good, Eric. How you doing, man?
I'm doing fantastic, So just kind of, I know in a lot of circles, you don't need a introduction, but can you give us a brief background of who you are and what have you done? And most people I know you're an intelligence person, which is odd to say if you're not in those circles. It's like he is intelligence.
Yeah, well, I'm just one guy, man. But no, I mean, you flatter me. Listen, I think very few people know who I am, and I'm cool with that. But yeah, my background really quickly. Right now I'm the VP of Intelligence at Zero Fox, which is a really cool cybersecurity and cyber intelligence company based out of Baltimore. Very cool stuff. Work with a great team doing amazing things. Background wise, I was in the government space for about 19 years. I was U.S. Air Force for about 9.5. I was medically retired. Then I did about nine and a half as a contractor. Most of that, almost all that time was spent at Fort Meade. So NSA, U.S. Cyber Command. I was originally a crypto linguist, Serbian and Croatian, and not very good at it. Ask anybody who knows me, they'll tell you. So I ended up doing intel analysis, which was great because it was sort of a round peg, round hole situation. I've done counterterrorism, counterinsurgency, countering trafficking persons, chased war criminals for a while there, and then spent the last handful of years in the government space countering threats in cyberspace. Moved in the private sector. I guess I'm going on about 6 years now. Started in the banking industry, and then worked for. I don't really talk too much about the brands, but the bank I worked for really cares about what's in your wallet. So there was that, and then I worked for Symantec for a few years, both on the commercial side, and then moved inside and helped build an Intel program there. Then moved on to a company called Anomaly for the last couple of years. Awesome people, really fun experience there. And then that brought me to Zero Fox, where right now we're building this amazing intelligence capability. So yeah, I've been around the block. I'm old, maybe not as old as I look, hopefully. And I've been lucky enough to do some cool stuff with some really smart people, and see some interesting things along the way.
That's fantastic. You forgot one thing though.
Uh-oh, what did I forget?
You're a football coach too, aren't you? You were
I
a football
was,
coach.
I was, and it's funny thing. It's funny you mentioned that football. When you're a coach, like it's like a permanent title, right? I run into guys I coach. It's been a while now. I have to admit, I've spent the last 22 years living in Maryland. I just moved back to my boyhood hometown of in Minnesota, so I don't run into the kids anymore. But it's funny. A decade later, you run into a grown man who walks up and goes, "Hey, man, Coach Nash." And so it's a title you keep forever, which is pretty awesome. I haven't coached in a long time. I absolutely love it. I miss it every day. If I, people talk about what'd you do if you hit the lottery, I would totally go back to coaching. The career has been really, really busy, and we do a lot of cool stuff. And I'd be cheating either the kids out of the coaching that they need and deserve, or I'd be cheating my business, partners and the relationships we have. It's a lot of work to do it well, and I didn't even do it all that well. So yeah, man, I have a huge passion for coaching. I got into it because I love football. I grew up playing football, not a particularly good player, but I like the game. So I got into coaching, and I thought I was going to coach, high school football because I wanted to coach football because I love the game. And it turns out what I really enjoyed, I love that part, but what I really enjoyed was the people, was the kids, was young men and women, and having an opportunity to mentor a little bit along the way and give some advice and see them grow. And I find teenagers fascinating and entertaining and interesting. Some people are frustrated by them. I just kind of chuckle at a lot of the teenage things because I remember being a teenager. And I miss that as much as I miss the X's and O's. Wish we won more games. Anybody who knows the programs I coached at, I apologize. I'm sorry we didn't do a better job on the field. I wish we won more football games. I own that. I didn't do a good enough job. But we put a lot of kids in college, and we did some good things, there. And the feedback I've gotten when I've run into kids and parents over the years tells me we did good. I love that. And the other thing I didn't mention, as long as you got to throw things out, I have a master's in organizational leadership. I don't care about bragging about degrees or whatever. The only reason I mention it is because it's in organizational leadership with a focus in servant leadership, which I'm a huge proponent of. And I could talk about servant leadership all night. And part of the reason I went into that program was because of football. I thought I saw a lot of management in my life, but not a lot of leadership. So I felt there was a gap to work through there. But I also thought it would help me be a better coach, quite frankly, better person, to be honest, better in business, better in a lot of ways. And I applied a lot of those things I learned at Gonzaga, go Zags, to coaching and to life and to business now and every day. So it all kind of comes full circle. But if anybody's out there looking for an offensive coordinator, somewhere down the road, keep my name in mind. I'd love to go back to do it. I still do have a playbook, and I know a couple of things here and there, but I can't right now, man. It's just the world's too busy, and I got things going on here, but I miss it tremendously. Now I moved to Minnesota, so I may miss it less because it's Arctic cold here. By 3 games in the season, I'm not sure I'd want to coach anymore. So we'll see if that breaks me of the spirit. My nephew's a quarterback now. I got to watch him play this last season. It was pretty darn cold out there.
Oh, fantastic. It's interesting commonalities we have between ourselves. I'm a track coach, and so
Nice.
I coach high school sprinters, and so yeah, that love for sports, that competitiveness that you get in sports, um, it translated in ways that I couldn't imagine into the workplace.
Yep.
Be it talking, you learn more about yourself and your leadership style coaching teenagers than you do
Oh.
training up adults.
Oh yeah, nothing more challenging. Nothing more and their parents, to be honest with you, but nothing more challenging, man, than the teenage mind. And if you can crack that one, if you can get in there and make a connection, you can connect with anybody in the business world. When you make those connections, they're real. Kids, like teenagers, don't put up with a lot of BS. They see if you're fake, and they drive right through that.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
you got to be genuine. You got to actually show you care. You got to mean it. And you got to break down that hard shell a lot of teenagers have. It just comes with being a teenager. Uh, and so, yeah, you get to work those skills. I'm sure you work them a lot with athletes. And I love track coaches. Obviously I coach football. We loved the track because they got real fast in the off season. It didn't conflict with our season. And so, and I coached offense. So our receivers and running backs, I was like, yeah, go run track, man. Get fast. Have those guys teach you how to stay low and get fast. So good for you, man.
Definitely. I certainly enjoy it. The last point I have on is it resonate with me because you beat me to it. Yeah, there's teenagers, they'll tell you if they think you're faking it. Yeah. So when you go back to work, you learn that you have to be more genuine. You have to be more authentic, because you can't do that at your side gig as a coach, because teenagers they'll read through that. But yeah,
yep.
So much fun, so much fun. But I'm pretty sure there's a few cyber nerds out there like, hey, they need to start talking cyber pretty.
Right. This is a cyber podcast. What are we doing?
Start talking cyber pretty soon. So to viewers, I apologize for that. You don't know, this is totally unscripted. But
that's right.
So when we're talking intelligence, we're talking cyber intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to explain this for us to maybe someone that doesn't know. Like, hey, intelligence. Like, hey, I know what intelligence is. I Google every day. And give us your opinion on what is intelligence and what is it not? Because what we may think it is may not be. So, what is intelligence and what is it not?
Yeah, man, that's a fundamental question, and it's so difficult. Because listen, as an intelligence, a guy who grew up in intelligence, right? A guy who was trained in the field, and most of us, it's a really challenging position to try to explain this to people. Well, first of all, as you walk in the room and say, oh, this guy works in the intelligence team, there's an immediate reaction from some people of, oh, he thinks he's smarter than me. Listen, man, I didn't name it intelligence. That's not my gig. Like, that's just what it's called. I don't think I'm smarter than somebody else. Like, there are people I work with all the time that are brilliant, that can do amazing things I could never do, that are smarter than me in so many ways, and then have no idea what intelligence is, and completely, blow it when it comes to that side. So it is a thing, right? It's a career field. So, I can give some really brief pieces on it, right? So the biggest thing I would tell anybody to look for, if I had visuals, I'd show you, but it's super easy to Google. If you Google Joint Publication 2-0, JP 2-0, publicly available, unclassified, there's a chart in there that talks about understanding data and information and intelligence. Super easy. And it really tells the story. And the simplest way I tell people is data is, if I gave you a whole list of IPs and URLs, just a whole list of data, that's data, right? It doesn't tell you anything. It's important, you need it, but it's data. If I give you that same list of IPs and URLs with some sort of a threat score or some sort of an association, maybe, that's not intelligence. Some people think so. That's information. I've informed the data. There's more context. Intelligence is when you can go down the path and say, here's the list of IPs and URLs. Here's the adversaries associated with it. Here's when it was safe. Here's when it was hostile. Here's what their motives and objectives were. Here's the tactics and techniques they use. Here's what we think is going to happen next. And here's the confidence rating associated with that, because we have all the supporting evidence that we've also graded out to make sure we understand the veracity of that. That's intelligence. Unfortunately, like, the fortunate thing about living in the age we do is people have access to so much, right? The world's knowledge is at your hands. People who are ignorant in this day and age are probably doing it by choice, because the entire internet's available to almost everybody. Admittedly, social economics come into play, and there are some disadvantages, so I don't want to ignore that. But for most of us, if you're listening to this, you obviously have some technology. It's available, and that's great. But most people are then unleashed on this and have this technology, and everything's coming at them, and they don't have the training to understand how to gauge the veracity of what they're reading and the credibility of what they're reading. So for many people, every story, every source is just equal to every other source. And then people gravitate towards the things that really already are the things that appeal to them to begin with. It's bias is what ends up coming out of it. And people gravitate towards the thinking they have. They have a thought, they go find a bunch of information that backs up that thought, and then they decide that, well, of course this is true. Look, I found a bunch of evidence. That's not intelligence. That's selective. And we're not allowed to do that. So, if I'm years ago in the agency, if we're, putting together a package to better understand an adversary, if I come in and say, well, I think this adversary is evil, I'll have no problem finding all sorts of things to support that position. And I guess theoretically, help somebody justify dropping bombs on them. We don't get to do that. We have to look for the totality of the data available, do the full assessment, and then come to a conclusion, which may not be the conclusion that we want, or the one we expected, certainly. But that's the importance. So there's a huge amount of integrity that goes into being in the intelligence field. There's a whole lot of training on structured analytic techniques. Anybody's capable of looking up that as well. There's a great book on structured analytic techniques. A lot of different techniques we use to root out bias, to really make sure that we're the data and the information we're using is valid, to properly call out assumptions versus just what is supported. There's a lot more to the field than just I read things, I thought about them. I've made I've made a conclusion, I made an assessment, I made a judgment. And the other piece I would say is that the words we use, words are so powerful. So if somebody wants their doctrine to read, intelligence community directives, feel free to Google that. It's unclassified again. There's about 800 of them. Most of them are really boring. But intelligence community directive 203, 206, and 208. Combined, I doubt they're 15 pages. Really easy reading, not complicated at all. You'd learn almost all you need to know about intelligence from JP 2.0 and those three ICDs. But it calls out in there our caveat language. So whether something's high confidence, low confidence, moderate confidence. And this is really, really important. I like to explain it to people because, again, we speak a different language because of the training than the normal usage of these words. So I might ask you, I might, hey, Erik, that project, man, are you gonna have that done next week? Oh, yeah, I'm gonna have it done. How confident are you? Oh, I got high confidence I'm gonna have it done. And I'm gonna walk away from Erik and go, oh, I don't know. I guess I trust the guy. Like, I don't know what your high confidence is based on. You just told me that, right? You might be lying to me. We'll find out next week, I guess. I can't do that in the intelligence community. If I say it's a high confidence assessment, I have to have the receipts, man. I have to be able to show you the data that got me there and how it works. So, when people are distrusting, which I totally understand why people distrust the government, there's enough bad stories. They're really the outliers. They're a small percentage, but there's enough bad stories to distrust. But when the government says we have a high confidence assessment based on a body of intelligence that X is going to happen, or X, it has happened. What people don't understand who aren't in this field is what that really means. What they're telling you is we have a ton of classified on this. I can't show it to you, but I didn't write high confidence for nothing. We have a ton of classified on this because we're all held accountable to that. If I write a high confidence assessment, somebody drops bombs on target and it's wrong, there's going to be some bad days ahead. So I think it helps if people understand this terminology. If I say I have a low confidence assessment based on a limited amount of intelligence, it means I'm telling you enough that I think I have to give you a judgment, but I wouldn't run off and do something on this. We have a lot more work to do. We have research to understand this better. And so now my passion, one of my passions, is to translate this knowledge to the private sector. So we're using the same terminology. Those same intelligence community directives I mentioned are actually the doctrine that my team uses. And we're trying to teach people along the way that this is what this means so people can better understand. And it's some uncomfortable stuff. You have to vet sources. And now we're in an age where that's difficult. Every source has become politicized. Each side screams fake news at the other side. Whether there's any validity to it or not, it's just to discredit somebody else so they don't have to listen to the opinion they didn't like. And our job as Intel people is to forget all that stuff. I look at all the sources, man. You name a news site, I probably pay attention to it. Some are harder for me to swallow than others. Some aren't news as much as they are, or should be perhaps. But I try to watch all of it, and then you gauge it, and you understand you apply the techniques we do, and you understand where we think the truth lies in there. And another big piece of it, and that's the last one, I promise I know I'm rambling, is we're trained on like I said, rooting out bias and being apolitical, which is also really, really hard. Human beings come with their biases in politics, but we're trained to notice that in ourselves and to root that out. I can't be credible and I can't be ethically give an answer if it's the answer I wanted to give. I have to run through the process, and every intel analyst I know has been there. I certainly was there once, working on a project for the Secretary of State at the time, and the project came down, and we were told, "Hey, I need you to prove X." And I said, I can't do that project. And I had a chat with my boss. I said, not based on that question. I said, they're telling me what the answer is going to be, and that's not how it works. If the question is, do these things work together? Are they connected? I'm happy to go run that project down. Otherwise, I'm calling in sick. Like, I was in the office. I said, I'm going to have a migraine in 5 minutes and be going home. I can't in good conscience run that project. And so we changed it and said, no, go find what you're supposed to, you find the truth, whatever we believe it is. And whatever that is what we'll report back up. As it turns out, lucky enough, that particular Secretary of State got what she wanted because their assumption was correct, which means they probably already had some intel that they didn't share with us in advance. But it's important to be able to stand up to power and say, hey, I'm not going to give you the answer you want. I'm going to give you the answer. and whatever that is what it is. And that's a challenging thing in the government space. It's a challenging when you're dealing with, senior political readers or people with a lot of brass on their collar. It's challenging in the private sector. I know people who've risked their jobs because they won't give the boss the answer the boss wants. But that's our gig. So no offense to anybody out there reading the news and trying to get smart and understand things. I'm thrilled that people want to, be involved and educated and have, everybody's entitled to an opinion and try to educate themselves. But occasionally anybody who spent time with me on social media has probably seen me argue with folks about things. I take it personally. We're trained differently, right? If I tinker on my car over the weekend, I'm not a mechanic. If I pull a tooth out with the pliers, I'm not a dentist. It's okay. Like, I'm also not whatever you are. I'm not a PhD. I'm not a track coach. I'm not. There's a lot of things I'm not. Most are very cool things I wish I was. This just happens to be the thing that I am, and a whole lot of other people are. So, that was a whole lot of answer. I'm sure we'll edit some of this down later, but
Oh no,
it's all
no,
good.
no. We're keeping the whole thing. Yeah, you bring up an interesting point. So one thing, an opinion that I believe is that Google, Bing, whatever your search engine of choice is,
Sure.
Yahoo, is created that everyone's pretty much an independent researcher to
Yep.
some degree. And I've done research that psychologically, people they're gonna look for their own version of the truth. That's
Mm-hmm.
just human nature. It's what individuals are going to do. But also, whomever they hear that news from, it resonates deeper with them.
Yep.
So I'm gonna take it to the most asinine extreme. You may have seen the meme that whether LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, wherever, that on February 15th, there's going to be two moons in the sky, and
Right. Right.
someone someone's going to post that, and it's gonna run wild. Well,
Sure.
because they're going to take it. People take not to that extreme. They'll take some variant of data. We'll just call it
Mm-hmm.
data,
Sure.
that their dad posted. So they're going to take that and they're going to internalize it as truth.
Yep.
Because you're not calling the article wrong, you're
Mm-hmm.
calling mom wrong, and
That's right.
mom's not wrong.
That's right.
It's I think it my belief on it, it goes deeper than the information. Is where you're getting the information from, and because everybody in the world now is an independent researcher, which
Mm-hmm.
is fantastic, but it's dangerous at the same time. That the where you're getting the data from, where
Mm-hmm.
you
No, you're
getting the
right.
data from, they can't be wrong. Dad
That's right.
can't be wrong. My brother can't be wrong. And the hell with you for saying
Uh-huh.
that they're wrong. Like, no, they're
They're wrong, man.
misinformed, and that article is wrong.
Dude, you hit it right on the head, man. I mean, you're right. I hadn't thought of it quite in that term. Like, we're all very tribal. So we have whatever our tribe is, right? Our family, our friends, whoever we chose, right? And you're right. There's a personal piece to it that we want to protect. I've talked about people protecting their own ego, refusing to let go of clearly inaccurate information. But I hadn't really thought about it until you just said it. Like, no, I'm protecting, my sister or my mother or my aunt or my friend. I'm protecting their honor. You're telling me my friend is wrong, or whatever. And I never thought about the way that people will personalize it and double and triple down. And sadly, and I don't know if this is because of growing up in Intel or just because of who I am and how I'm wired. I'm only loyal to the truth. I really don't care about the source, man. I'll tell my friends, I'll tell my family, my girlfriend, whatever. Dude, you're wrong. Like, that is, and I won't lie. There's domestic, arguments occasionally over this, and I'm like, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And then I have to back it up and be like, hold on a second. That's really rude. That's not what I meant. What was your source? Let's have a discussion. Because sometimes I hear things that are just insane. And the thing is, normally, like, listen, my girlfriend's bright. If she shared something insane, she probably knows it's insane. I just didn't give her a chance to go, hey, did you hear the stupid thing? She says the thing, and I jump on it because I'm reactionary sometimes. But yeah, I think you're right. Is that people personalize this stuff, and then they double and they triple down, and then even if it's so obvious, then I think ego can kick in, and they're like, I can't back away from this. So I mean, you've seen it. We've all seen this, right? And we get this cult mentality builds. There's a whole lot of people spewing a lot of stuff that I have a hard time believing even they believe. But in order to stop believing, they have to start to face truth, which is very painful. It's a threat to the ego, and it's just easier to keep going. As long as I keep going on it, I can deny that I've been a fool, or that I've spouted these things that are inaccurate or untrue. Yeah, despite massive evidence to the contrary of my opinion, as long as I keep my opinion, then I don't have to be the fool. I don't have, nobody can prove it. And we've seen, sadly, large scale leaders take this opinion and run with it. So it becomes more normalized. And for me, like, I don't care about the politics. It just frustrates me when people aren't honest. Don't abide by the truth. Like, to me, it just can't insult truth. Like, we have to have some objective facts and truth. There's a whole lot of things that aren't, and there's a whole lot of things open to interpretation, but some things are just objective truth. And I think we're working past it, man. I was talking to a friend of mine who also happens to be a PhD. I said, I think I want to write something on, like, what it's like to, politics in a post-truth America. I don't have anything more than the title, so I haven't gotten very far. But I need somebody smarter to actually write the thing. But that's where we are. Politics in a post-truth America, and what does that mean? You said it. When people find their own version of the truth, and there is no own version of the truth. There's the truth. Like, there are interpretations of opinions, etc. But the truth is the truth. And I think you're right that we've just gotten to this point now where people are like, nope, that's not what I believe, and you can't convince me otherwise. And I'm just going to keep sticking with my sources, and I'm going to live in my tribe. And we can't get people to cross over. And those that try, it's very, very hard. The moderate people who want to cross over boundaries and connect people, you're in for a lot of pain. You better have some thick skin, man. So, and I'm telling you all this like you don't know. Like, this is you. I'm stealing your lines, man. You're the guy with the PhD in this field. This is all. I'm stealing your glory.
Oh no, no, not at all. We're all in this. We're all in this together. My last point to this, if anyone's kind of struggling to follow along, or if they think like, hey, I don't understand exactly what they're trying to get. I'll put it in the terms in how I grew up. Most people probably grew up in a similar way in this fashion. Is that when I was sick, the cure all for everything was pretty much Robitussin and
Robitussin.
ginger ale. Yeah, Robitussin, ginger ale.
There you go.
Or 7-Up. Something
That's right.
along the line that would cure just about anything. And so when I'm sick currently, I'm like, hey, I'm gonna grab some Robitussin. Who knows what the science actually is of what I have. My go-to is what I was raised on. And it's not because if someone tells me like, hey, if I'm of the mindset like, hey, it's not going to help you out, I'm like, no, it's not. But I'm of the mindset of, all right, tell me what's actually going to help. And we're asking what we're saying regarding intelligence is that's what we're doing. We're trying to say, hey, we're going to come from the outside to say, hey, you probably need to look at this from a different way. Robitussin isn't gonna fix your sore muscle. Like, you went to the gym, you're sore. You don't need Robitussin or something like that. But if you think you can put it in terms of yourself and whatever family traditions you have, and you may think like, just that is kind of asinine. Like, I have a headache and I sit in Epsom salt.
That's right. And we all have one, man. You're right. We all have it. Every family has something like that, right? Where it's like, grandma said to use this thing. And you're like, well, what's the logic? I don't know. Grandma said, so I just do it. I'm not going to, you question my grandmother? I'm like, hey, go ahead. Like, that's going to make you feel better. Maybe the placebo effect works, but grandma wasn't a doctor, and what she prescribed for you, oatmeal isn't going to fix this. I'm not sure what you're doing, but all right, go ahead, eat some oatmeal. Whatever makes you happy, man. We all have that. That's such a great observation. And Robitussin is a perfect example. I knew where you're headed right away. I was like, it's gonna be Robitussin and ginger ale. Like, that cures everything, right? Robitussin's a cold, ginger has your guts. Like, go back to school. Like, you're fine. Here's some aspirin, maybe too, if we have some. But yeah, it's a perfect analogy, man. You hit it.
All right. So I want to ask you about in an area that's unique to you that I would plead ignorance on. You went from a 3-letter agency, the NSA, to like the normies of us, of just us. And from my experience, there's many kinds of intelligence, but I would break it down to strategic intelligence and like threat intelligence. Those are like
Mm,
the two major type. And in the private sector, you have like proactive intelligence and like responsive
mm, mm,
intelligence. I feel us on the private side to, and I'm including myself in this. We do very poorly when it comes to proactive intelligence.
oh yeah.
Reactive or responsive intelligence to figure out
Hmm.
what the hell happened. We're getting better.
Hmm.
Are we
Hmm.
great at it? No. In this
Hmm.
world of cyber where everything could be faked to figure out who
Yep.
actually did what, we're getting better. And that's a
Attribution's
nice
hard.
way. It's a way of just saying we're absolutely terrible. We're pretty much absolutely terrible. Uh,
it's it's not been a great decade.
so what do you feel seeing both sides of
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
coin? What are kind of open ended? What is your observation if someone from the government's thinking they're going to do the same thing, go to the private
Hmm.
sector,
Hmm.
or if we're myself, I'm in the private sector, like, hey, I wish we're better at this.
Hmm. Hmm.
What are the two differences that you see between the
Yeah, man, what a great question. So, I mean, I think I I'm gonna I'm gonna take advantage of this opportunity because you mentioned something I gotta tip on really quickly. Normies, right? So going back to what we just talked about people, whether you're an intelligence professional or whether people who just claim, hey, I read stuff, I'm intelligent too, which are totally different things, right? I literally, and I won't name names, I'm not interested in going down that path. I literally got in an argument with somebody who said, you don't know anything, you're just a normie, you have no idea who you're talking to. Now, this person also, by the way, knows my resume and also has never been cleared or worked in the agencies before. And I was like, I don't know why we're having this discussion. And I had to be the jerk and be like, yeah, here's my resume. 19 years in the intelligence community. How the hell am I the normie in this discussion? Like, what are we doing here? I don't understand how we ended up in this part. I wasn't going to lay that out. Like, I don't call people normies. Like, right person, has a lot of skill set, but I found I had to be like, you just walked right into my lane and told me that I don't know what I'm doing. Like, this is weird. So it's funny because it's twice in a week now I've heard the word normie, which I probably haven't heard in months. Anyway, to get to your point, the more important piece, right? So, lessons learned, moving into the private sector, et cetera. First of all, the cultures are entirely different. I will tell you, my first gig into the private sector, first of all, totally by accident. In fact, my entire resume is just one series of accidents after another. I'm forced gumping my way through life. I haven't made a smart decision in my life intentionally or planned. Anybody who says, how do you get where you are in life? Or, I don't know, stumble along and try to do good things, talk to a ton of people, learn everything you can, be a good person. And if hopefully I was blessed with just a little bit of a brain, which is enough to get by. So I don't have any great plans there, but in moving to the private sector, same way. I actually, a buddy of mine convinced me to get on LinkedIn. Good plug for LinkedIn. As an Intel guy, I'd never been on any social media. I got on LinkedIn. Literally, like the next day, they announced a breach. I was less than pleased. But yeah, like the next morning. So obviously, I wasn't breached because it was earlier. But I was like, "Are you kidding me?" But a bank reached out to me. Somebody reached out and wanted to talk. Very interesting discussions. I ended up moving over. Learned a lot. I won't lie. My first experience in the private sector wasn't a particularly good one. There was some challenges. Some I own. Some it turns out I didn't. I found out there were some reputations I should have done more research on people before I joined the org. But you learn the cultures are really different. And the biggest thing I learned was how little people know about the things I just said a minute ago. You come out, you spend 18, 19 years doing anything. I don't care what it is. I don't care if you're laying bricks. I don't care if you're an accountant, whatever it is. There's so many things that you have done so long that you've forgotten more than anybody's ever going to learn about that career field. And you're around everybody all day long that does the same thing. So there's some assumption you get used to the idea of everyone knows what I'm talking about. And again, I spent my whole growing up in the agency. So I come over and I'm spewing terminology that I'm assuming people know what the hell I'm talking about. Nobody has any clue. And I'm assuming a lot of things that I shouldn't have. So there was conflicts and there were some challenges in trying to do that. I also found in my case, I found my path that said my job has to be to help get people to understand these things. And I'm not alone. Like, there's a whole lot of other people, smart people coming out doing it. So part of the advice I give to anybody who's thinking of leaving the agencies, first of all, do it. It's great out here. Once you find your feet, there's so much to do and there's so much good to be done. But accept the fact that people aren't like you. They didn't come from where you came from. They don't know what you know. and that's okay. They know different things, but you're going to have those conversations, help people understand, and spend time talking about what we learned 15 years ago and have forgotten is where the private sector is. So we need to get people to get that and get away from, assumptions becoming reality, not understanding caveat language, not understanding, conclusions, not understanding argumentation, and proper building of cases. It's not too dissimilar. In some cases, we do all right. Listen, you've got a PhD. I'm going to make some assumptions based on that. I'm going to assume that you know how to do research. I'm going to assume you know how to write. I'm going to assume you know how to do logical argumentation. There are some people like that certainly in this field, so you appeal to that and go, hey, listen, it's the same concept as that, man. I'm just going to teach you some different terminology with it. But there's also a ton in this industry who weren't raised that way, and brilliant, smart people. You don't have to have a degree to be in cybersecurity. You don't have to agree to be valuable by any means. There are brilliant people with no degrees, but this is a field that they may have missed. They got into the tech side of it and they really learned how to write code, and they learned how all these amazing, important, difficult things, but none of that involved sitting down and doing some of this, logic assessment type stuff that we do. So I learned you got to have that discussion, and you really got to help people get to that point, and you got to find a way to do it without offending them. And it's hard. Again, when I come in and say I'm the intelligence guy, or oh, you're from intelligence, some people get their hackles up and think I must assume I'm smarter, and you got to start by even getting rid of the term and go, hey man, I'm just going to talk to you about how we do things. Right? I'm not interested in all that jazz. But so that was, I think, a big learning experience, was how different we are. There's also culture difference, like meetings don't start on time in the private sector. I grew up in the government space, and a lot of it was in the military. 8 o'clock means be there at 7:50. Meetings started at 8. I promise you. Now, man, no meeting starts on time, and I'm guilty of it constantly. I've been in the environment long enough. It's because every meeting ends late, so every other meeting ends late, and because we do so many things, and there's ad hoc, and you're moving, and you have to learn to be flexible and adapt and adjust. And it's good, I think, once you get there. But coming out of the government space, it's odd at first, and it feels wrong. You've been trained to think that people don't value your time, or it's offensive, or whatever. Dude, they're probably doing something else really important. Just go ahead and wait and find out what it is. You might learn something cool. So I mean, there's a culture piece there that was something to adapt to. And then the last one I think you mentioned is, are we doing a good job? Well, there's work to be done, I would say. You talked about interesting proactive and reactive, which I think is huge. I spent a lot of time discussing that because every CISO, every company says, I want to be proactive. I want to stop things before they happen. And few, I won't say none, but very few actually want to do what it takes to be there. They all say that because it is the right thing, but ultimately, it's very hard to spend money on a thing that's very hard to measure. It's much easier to measure reactions. How long did we used to get breached and it took 3 days to resolve it. Now, thanks to our technologies and processes and accesses, we can do it in 12 hours. Wow, we really cut down our breach time, by whatever that is, 60 hours, 75% time, whatever it is. There's lots of metrics on the back end of bad things already happened. There's not a lot of metrics on, hey, we spent $2 million on intelligence last year and we didn't get breached. So what do we use it for? I try to tell people with Intel, you can't think of it like endpoints and firewalls and some of those technologies that spit out amazing metrics. I think of it like health insurance or physical security at a bank. If I'm at a bank and we have 12 security guards and 5 cameras and all this stuff, and in 5 years we don't get robbed, should we cut our security? Like, we're obviously wasting money. Nothing's happening. There's no threat. No, nobody thinks that way. Everybody knows the cost of doing business in banking is security. In health insurance, if I don't have I haven't had a heart attack, knock on wood, my whole life. I have health insurance. Am I just going to dump it? Oh, I'm healthy. I'm sure I'll be fine forever. No, it's inevitable. I'm going to need health insurance. And the truth is, in cyber, it's inevitable that bad things are going to happen in an interconnected world. So I tell people we got to figure out a way to invest in it. There's a lot more work to be done on how to measure value, but I tell them either invest now or go ahead and buy lots of cryptocurrency and update your resume. It's an eventuality. It's just, and I've said that directly to CISOs who look at me shocked. I'm like, listen, I'm just telling you the facts. We're working to be better about this, but the truth is, there's 2 kinds of companies: those who've been breached and those who will be breached. And some of the ones who think they're the will be already have been and just don't know it yet. So there's some truth in it, and we got to find the balancing act. To be proactive means spending money to stop things that you may have a hard time measuring you were successful stopping. But to me, the metric is, don't get breached, do good things. Easy for me to say, it's not my budget. So, this stuff costs a lot of money. And so we battle that all the time, and everybody's trying to find the sweet spot on budget. I personally will tell you, I think that cybersecurity organizations, CISOs, None of their compensation should be tied to bottom line, which is a big problem. A lot of CISOs compensation is tied to being profitable. Well, that tells me I'm going to put my personal needs ahead of the company. If I can just, I tell people it's like being the jack in the box. The risk is there, and I'm going to crank the wheel, and I'm going to crank it a little further, and I'm going to just hope I don't get it, and then I'm going to jump to another job. And then the next guy's going to bing, the clown comes out and everything goes terrible. Well, the guy who's sitting on the box says, not my fault. Last guy did a terrible job. I need a whole bunch of budget to fix it. And the guy who left is already off to something else. He's good. Or she, although in our industry, let's face it, so far, sadly, it's almost always he still. And the circle goes round and round, and everybody gets off the hot seat before bad things happen if they can. Occasionally, you get popped, and well, here's your golden parachute of 10 million, go away for a few years. But I think that's a problem. I think too many CISOs have the pressure that comes with profitability, and that is absolutely in contrast with good security, which is doing what needs to be done. And so I think people shirk on proactivity is what it comes down to. And everybody's already accepted we're all going to get popped eventually, so nobody's going to blame me when we get popped. I just have to do the minimum to check the right boxes so that I can say, well, we followed the guidelines, we did what we were supposed to do, we met the auditor's approval. And a lot of folks, listen, some really, really care, but a lot of people in cybersecurity at high levels don't really care about the information they're supposed to be protecting. They don't internalize that. They don't. There are a lot who do. Don't get me wrong. I know people who are broken when their company gets compromised. But there are so many who just don't. It's a job and they're just doing it. They know it's going to happen anyway. Just help me not be on the hot seat when it happens, and let me keep cashing checks, because adversaries are everywhere and things are bad. And when we do get popped, people aren't going to be surprised anyway, because everybody gets popped. So, I think it's hard to be really, really successful in that environment. But we keep trying, and we keep trying to educate people. I spend a ton of time talking about proactive intelligence. Intelligence is the only way for proactive security. By definition, everything else is reactive. Everything else means something's already happened. Intelligence tells you what adversaries are thinking and planning before it gets to you, so you can make changes to prevent things from happening. Nothing else does that. And if you're not investing in that, you're not investing in proactivity, no matter what you say. I don't care about endpoint. I don't care about detection. I don't care about that. That means something touched you. Like, that's there. Talk to me about what people are, what adversaries are thinking and planning way away from us, what they've done to other organizations like us, so we can prepare for it. That's intelligence. That's being proactive. And some of it means investing in things and having faith that you're better off for having it than not, like the security guard at the bank, and like health insurance.
Oh, very, very interesting. So if I'm listening to this and just absolutely loving it. However, could you give us insight into, if I was to coin it, it'd be like, do intelligence like an NSA agent. Like, when it comes to intelligence, I don't want this to lead to, like, all right, we're gonna set up an intelligence department, and then it's just like, all right, be intelligent and walk away. How how
That ain't gonna
does
work.
when it comes to intel, when it comes
Yep.
to trying to be proactive,
Yep.
what are the steps? What are one of the few things you look for? I know it's different for different scenarios and things like that, but kind of in generalities, what are you looking for, and how far out are you looking? Is it like, well, we're looking 10 years out, we're trying to get attacks from 10 years out? Is it 1 month out? How far out are you looking?
Yeah. So that's a good question. Some of it's actually not that complicated. Like, I keep telling people I'm going to give this away enough times, people go, man, this is not that hard. We don't need you. So there's a thing called the intelligence cycle. Again, if people want to Google stuff, highly recommend it. Simple graphic, tells you everything you know about intelligence, right? So there's 6 steps in the intelligence cycle, basically. So there's the planning and direction. And for what it's worth, this is where 90% of the companies I've counseled around the world, frankly, get it wrong. They went from no intelligence to, all right, we believe it, we need to have intelligence, and they jump right to step 2, which is collection. They go buy a bunch of stuff. They're skipping the most important piece. Planning and direction is where it all starts. Let's understand, what's our mission? What are we trying to accomplish? What are we protecting? We need to know our own environment, which a lot of people fail at. Stand on any stage anywhere and say, show of hands, who's really confident in their CMDB, and everybody just chuckles and laughs. which is sad because it's not a joke. That's the heart of your organization. You're just saying, I don't know my environment, haha, and you're dead. Anybody doing a crown jewels assessment? No, of course we don't invest in those. Well, okay, great. This is going to be fun. So, I push a lot of those, which aren't Intel pieces, but they're dependencies. Like we can't be, even if I told you today, man, hey, I have 100% proof from the source that a bad guy is going to attack you tomorrow. On this, they're going after you on this piece of software and this vulnerability. If you can't tell me if you even have that piece of software, and if you do, where in your environment it is, and what's co-located with it, that's anything from I don't care, we don't use that software, to that is a massive vulnerability that's exposed to the environment and goes right to our crown jewels and would sink our company, and everywhere in between. So please don't ask me as the Intel guy then, hey, how important is this to me? Man, I don't know. I don't know your environment, and neither do you. So I suggest you work on that quickly because things are bad. So, I tell people start with your planning and direction. Who are our stakeholders is really the first piece. Who do we serve? All right. Because ultimately, intelligence is a service, man. It's not a product. Who do I serve? In the government space, who did I serve? I worked for NSA, I worked for DERNSA, I worked for, the president, the other, executives, right? So understanding their requirements. So you have to figure out who you serve. You have to help document intelligence requirements. And I promise you, in our space, the other thing I learned very quickly is nobody knows what an intelligence requirement is. We spend a ton of time explaining intelligence requirements. Otherwise you just chase a bunch of shiny objects. So you have to be able to document what matters most to us. Everything can't be priority one, then nothing's priority one, nothing gets done. So what matters most to us? What are we protecting? What are our crown jewels? What are our communication structures? What are the technologies we can't live without? The business processes that'll break and ruin our company, et cetera. You start developing some knowledge about what your needs actually are, and who you're serving and how they want to consume it. Is this somebody who listens to podcasts on the way to work? Is this somebody who reads papers? Is this somebody who likes pictures? It's good to be able to deliver to something who's actually going to consume it. It doesn't do me any good if you love PowerPoint and you hate Excel and I send you nothing but Excel spreadsheets. I might as well just throw them out the window. I'm not actually delivering intelligence to anybody because you're not going to consume it. So know your audience. Once we've done that, then we move to collection. Now we can develop a collection plan. We know what we need. We know what matters. And now I can start talking to vendors who actually fill those needs. So, because I promise you, there's always vendors at the door waiting to, spend your money for you. If you skip planning and direction, they won't slow you down because that slows down the sale. So, yeah, we've got the best thing that'll make you, safe. No, man. And I spent a lot of time at multiple companies now, including here, saying, hey, let's talk about your requirements. I don't want anybody to buy something from me or any place else for that matter that isn't going to work. That's a short-term thought process. Great, we'll cash a check, but you're not going to be happy. You're going to make me miserable for years to come because I'm serving an account that it can't be made happy, and you're going to leave and you're going to speak poorly about us. Let's figure out the needs, and if we don't actually serve those needs, let's be honest about it. Let's direct you to somebody who does, so you can get what you need. And I'm a good guy who's just doing good things, and I'm not just some pirate out here trying to make money. So it's important to understand the planning and directive phase. What do we actually need? Who do we actually serve? Then we move to collection. We actually start going, okay, what do we need? What kind of intel matters to me? What do I protect? What don't I protect? How do I prioritize it? I can't afford everything I need. So what matters most to us? And we start building a collection plan so we can go out and have the right discussions with the right vendors, and tools come into play here. Hey, if I've got all the money in the world, I'm going to get a lot of collection. Another thing that comes up is, well, we're just going to get this one vendor. Well, that's probably a mistake. I mean, I get it for budget. It happens. But there's 17 agencies in the intelligence community for a reason in the government. If the president only chose to listen to one or two agencies, they're going to have a lot of gaps in their knowledge. Same is true in the private sector. No one vendor does everything. So ideally, you put together a really large collection plan, and then you get the budget for as much as possible, and then you prioritize the things you can get first, things you can get value out of, and then you start working on that. And then you've got to also make sure you have the right people. I don't think you have to hire everybody out of the agencies. Everybody has to have 20 years experience to be Intel. But I always tell people, if you're going to build an Intel program, please hire one person like that and start. First of all, they'll recruit other people, but they'll also be able to teach the people who need to. Most everything I've learned and most everything anybody in the agencies have learned is actually available. Like everything I mentioned, the ICDs and the JP2-0 and the structured analytic techniques. And there's books and books and books on this. This is not classified on how to become an Intel analyst. It just takes more time than sitting down at Google. But we can train people, we can teach people, we can grow people, we can hire people. There's universities that teach us really well now. Mercyhurst comes to mind as a really good one. So then you get the right people and the right tools, and then you can start applying the analytic techniques and actually doing the work that needs to be done. And then you've got to have an output mechanism at some point. So you've actually got to develop the templates and the standards and the practices for how you're going to communicate back to the customer that you've assessed their needs so you can meet their needs. And then you have to have a feedback loop, which nobody has, including the government space. It's very hard to get anybody to tell you if you're any good. Only feedback I ever got in classified reporting was when I was on stage or directly talking to somebody, and they would tell me. Otherwise, you just throw it in the machine and hope it works. But you have a feedback loop so you get better the next go round. And so, I mean, it's not complicated. It's hard, but not complicated. It takes time and effort, but almost anybody can do it. People just like to jump around and skip the order of things. If you skip past planning and direction and go to buying stuff, and you skip past, hiring people that have skills, and you just go to assumptions, I promise at the back end you're going to have some really, really bad things happen, despite spending lots of money on very expensive intelligence. The other pieces have to be done, and we build the systemic approach. So I've spent time going around the world consulting on this. I do it for free. I don't charge. It's normally built into other things I do with companies, but my goal is to help people get smarter on this. And the theory, of course, listen, we're all in business to make money. Smarter customers buy things and know what to do with them, and we'll be happy customers and we'll renew. So there's a benefit to the business, of course. A customer who understands their needs, now we can fulfill their needs. They're happy, we get paid. Great. It's better for everybody. There's a win-win. Nothing wrong with that. So I mean, those are just some of the steps that we work really hard on. And then we really have to educate people on how to read intelligence, how to understand those words. If I tell a CISO today we have a low confidence assessment based on limited intelligence that China is going to attack, or we have a high confidence assessment based on a large body of intelligence that China is going to attack, most of them just hear China's going to attack, and we haven't done our job. Then they go off and run off and do things. I spend as much time, and I tell my team, one of the biggest values you have in an intel team is telling you what you can safely ignore. News is noise a lot of times. Clicks do generate revenue. So the headline of this terrible new malware a lot of times is it's a variation on something we knew 6 years ago that you're already protected against. So a lot of times the intel team's job is to help people calm down and just go, hey, this isn't as bad as it sounds. Here's what we really know about it. Here's ground truth. It's okay. We're covered. And then sometimes sound the alarm when things are really bad. So yeah, that was a lot. Like this is why my stuff gets edited. I'll ramble. Like this is stuff I like doing, but that's in a nutshell. There's like processes are the other thing I guess I'd mention if I was going to keep talking. Is I think I've got a document someplace with like 9 processes to building an intel organization. It's all very process based and repetitive and measured, so you can get to the same conclusions every time through the same processes. You have to be able to document that stuff, which is great for regulators later on too. So I'll stop.
That's mind-blowing. That's fascinating. Do you have? Can you provide? I'm trying to think of how to phrase the question. Can you provide an example of this cycle of a time where you maybe not from beginning to end? I know different people have different roles in different organizations, but if someone wanted to put this into practice, how? Could you walk through a case study of some lived experience?
Yeah, man. I've actually got one that I like. It's old now, but I love the story, so I tell it anyway. So we had talked about being proactive, right? And one of the things I tell people is, we talk about proactive and reactive. Listen, man, there's tens of thousands of intel analysts in the government space. We're not all focused on, or weren't when I was there, China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. Somebody someplace is in a shop studying Bolivia right now. I don't think we're going to war with Bolivia. I don't know anything about Bolivia. But if tomorrow Bolivia is a problem, it's too late to learn about Bolivia. So we have to have people who know. Now, we don't put a giant team on Bolivia. You adjust your resources based on perceived risk. But somebody's studying Bolivia. So the reason I mention that is it comes up in private sector work. So I was working, it was actually at the bank at the time. And so we were doing some research on actors and groups and things like that. And there's a concept called cyber extortion. It's a pretty easy concept. Used to be adversaries would send an email to you saying, hey, we're going to attack you. This is your warning. If you don't give us X number of Bitcoin into this wallet by Y date, we're going to give you a huge DDoS attack, take you offline. And to prove we're serious, we're attacking you right now. And you'd go check your network logs and something anomalous was going on. And it would freak people out. And that has since moved on. Actually, it's interesting. They've moved on from email a lot of times to customer service portals because there's no header, there's nothing to track. And they know whoever receives it doesn't have any idea what to do with it, and they're going to panic. So this was 6 years ago now, or 5 years ago, whatever it was. It's a common thing, and so there was a new group at the time, a new group called Katarovtsi, who was sending out these threats. And we'd done research on the group. We had identified who we thought they were. The letter, by the way, if anybody wants to go into this business, the letter is available on Pastebin. You can pull down the form letter. Just go ahead and open a Bitcoin wallet, change a couple numbers, and start threatening people if you want. I don't recommend it; it's illegal. You'll go to prison, but there's some money to be made, I guess. So this we found all this right. We laid it all out, and we said at the time we had a moderate confidence assessment that this group probably was unable to perform and actually fulfill their threats, whereas some groups maybe could. And so, we wrote the report. It went up to the CISO, pats in the back. Wow, really cool stuff. And then nobody did a damn thing with it. So this is where we failed. What we should have done, and we were just too new. It's my fault. We were too new. What we should have done with that is said, hey, let's educate the customer service people. This is possibly going to happen at some point. We should let them know what to do if and when this message comes through the customer service portal. We didn't. We were so busy celebrating that the CISO was happy with our work. We just walked off about our business. Well, it happened eventually. Like the very letter showed up. It came in right before a holiday weekend, and nobody in customer service in this case knew about the intel. We hadn't spread it around or anything. So it went from customer service all the way up to the E staff, like all the way up to the C suite, maybe even the CEO. I don't remember which C it stopped at, and then came crashing all the way back down. So now we got people panicking and going nuts. And this is exactly what we're supposed to avoid. We did our part. We were proactive. We studied an adversary. We reported on it in advance. We failed to message it to the right people, and everything we wanted to avoid happened anyway, and people freaked out. And so now I'm trying to put cats back into the barn on this one, or that's a terrible analogy, but now I'm trying to fix it. And so I'm like, whoa, we know this group, and we're pulling up our intel. We said, hey, we have an intel report on this. Let us do an assessment, right? So we go back and do some research, and we come back a couple hours, and we're like, listen, our assessment hasn't changed. We think it's unlikely they're able to actually fulfill this threat. Instead of spending a ton of money canceling everybody's vacation on the 4-day weekend, which by the way, adversaries love to do things right before holiday weekends because people are more pressured to just pay the ransom than screw up their weekend. It happens in the government, by the way, too. So we gave a different recommendation. So instead of spending a ton of money and canceling a bunch of leave, we went on alert. We kept some people, just a small cadre available 24 hours in case it was necessary, and we watched it play out. We also were able to identify, I don't know, a dozen, 13, something like that, organizations around the world that were facing the same threat at the same time. It was a campaign. And we built a working group, and we started working with banks around the world. So it was great. We ended up being a leader in the field. Fast forward through the weekend, we did not pay the ransom. We also did not suffer the attack. So the assessment worked. We still did manage to get in a position to save the company a bunch of money, and a bunch of pain and suffering, but we didn't do it as well as we could have. If we just done one more thing right on the front end, just taken the time to say, hey, who should we tell this to besides ourselves? Let's go talk to customer service and kind of give them a quick briefing. I could have spent an hour in a room with customer service leadership, and when this came later, nothing would have come. Like they would have come straight to us. It would have skipped to the E staff. We would have handled it internally and sent a recommendation up along with the alert later. It would have been much better for everyone. So smart people doing good things. We got it right, but we didn't do it as well as we could have. But again, the investment in proactivity, and I'll tell you, we got some pats on the back for the report. I'll tell you the truth. My boss didn't see the value in writing the report. My boss wasn't an Intel guy, and said, I don't get this because it didn't fit anybody else's metrics. This didn't make us safer. Writing this, wasted time and energy, in their opinion. You spent expensive time and energy writing a report about an adversary that's never touched us. What do we care? And trying to explain this matters. This is tied to our intel requirements. There's a likelihood this will be a problem later. If you just focus on everybody attacking banks today, you're just right on the edge of the wire, basically. So we were right on that one. We could have done better. So it's a learning experience. I try to remember now again, who do you serve? So when we do an intel product, we serve the CISO, of course, but you got to remember when you put something out, hey, who's responsible for making this better? I tell people now, intel to me is tell them what happened, tell them why it matters, tell them what they can do about it. That's it. That's you got it. You can't just tell them what happened. That's the news. You tell them what happened, tell them why it matters. That's context. Tell them what they can do about it, which might be nothing, which is okay. But at least tell them, hey, we know you can't do anything about this. Just we want you to know. Be alert, be vigilant, be aware. But tell them those three elements, and then people don't say, well, why am I reading this? What does this mean to me? Otherwise, it's just a lot of folks say it's intelligence, and you read it, it's the news. Hey, here's the things that happened. Oh, great. And here's my opinion about what's going to happen going forward, but I don't have anything to base it on. I can't show you the evidence of how I went down that path. I'm giving you a hunch. Give me some money, please. So we don't we don't do it that way.
That that's interesting because as I hear that story, I'm trying to put myself in a position of, uh, just kind of think about it and digest that information as would we be able to survive a attack like that, or would we panic much like your organization did,
Mm-hmm.
but you just had a plan for it. Uh, Thinking about organizations I've worked for, organizations I consulted for that
Mm-hmm.
do not have anyone running any level of proactive intelligence, uh, we'd be in the same boat.
Oh
Like
yeah,
we
a
would
lot of people pay
100%
the ransom. A
be
lot of
in the
people pay the
same.
ransom, man.
Oh yeah, yeah. And with ransoms like that, ransomware, it's not slowing down.
No,
Just like a
no.
caveat, we're just in a perfect environment. I don't want to sound like I'm anti crypto or anything because I'm not, but it's a perfect environment. You have money that's not regulated that's worth something. Because could you
Somebody, yeah.
imagine ransomware wouldn't exist if crypto wasn't there? It probably would have, but it's hey,
Not nearly as powerful.
yeah,
Yeah,
we're
be very
transferring
hard.
this money to
Mm-hmm.
this Wells Fargo account or something
Right,
like
right,
that. Like,
right. I think I'm going to find that guy pretty quickly. Like it's not
yeah,
going to be hard to go. Bob Johnson came to pick up the check that we dropped off for him. Yeah, it's not good.
yeah, perfect timing for an attack like that. This
Mm-hmm.
is, but yeah, it shows there's a lot of value in having some proactive intelligence to
Yep.
stop things like that from happening. Because I haven't been in or consulted for many organizations that would have had that level of intel to say, you know what, like granted, we're panicking, but hey, we need to chill because
Yep.
we have this report that says we're fine.
Yep.
Um, Many organizations, and I encourage those that are listening, think about your own organization. If you're just in just pure panic mode, and then you're thinking about whether you pay the ransom or not, whether it's just your core belief that hey, I'm not going to pay the ransom, which I
Mm-hmm.
applaud, like because
Yep.
if we're going to slow it down, we need to change the economics in it, which is
Yep.
not paying it, which I applaud. But or you could just be real with yourself and think, well, what would we do if we
Mm-hmm.
had that? Are we going to pay the ransom? Are we going to make this go away, or
Mm-hmm.
what are we going to do?
Well, yeah. What
Uh,
are you doing to give yourself options? Like people who pay the ransom, in my opinion, in most cases, their options are really, really limited in the moment. They don't have a plan in place. They don't have a contingency plan. They don't have data. Their hygiene isn't good. Their backups aren't in place. They don't have intelligence. They didn't do a crown jewels assessment. They didn't map out their CMDB properly, so they didn't realize that the vulnerability was right there. By the time that bad thing happens, you're really, really late, right? So, but again, investing now in the proactivity includes the planning, it includes knowing your environment, and also having a policy and saying this is what we will and will not do, and being able to stick to that once your feet are in the fire. It's easy now to go, I'm never going to pay the ransom. Are you really going to stand up to it when time comes? Now, I'll tell you, I'm a hardcore believer in never ever pay the ransom, with one exception. And the one exception I will make is imminent death. Healthcare, hospitals, I get it. You're not going to have 50,000 patients in an entire healthcare system drop dead because you were unwilling to pay the ransom. You should have had better security. Otherwise, don't pay the ransom. I don't care if it's inconvenient. I don't care if they wipe all your drives. You have to start over. I don't care if they embarrass your company. And I get it. It's easy for me to say. I've had CEOs say, "Well, you're out of your mind. If they released this information, we'd have gone out of business. It's millions and millions lost, and we only had to give them 100 grand to go away." All right, I get the economics. I know they're not going to listen to me. They're going to pay the 100 grand, but you're just feeding the machine. If you pay a ransom, one, you may or may not get back your stuff. Like if you think you can trust criminals, you may not understand the world entirely. You may or may not get your stuff back. Although interestingly, criminals are doing a better job of actually following through on their promises because they want to be seen as credible. So next time you'll pay the ransom because there will be a next time. You've proven you'll pay. You're the cash cow now. If it's like dealing with telemarketers. You get 1,000 of those. The first time you give somebody money, you're going to get 1,000 more of those telemarketers. It's sad. I love charity. I give and it's important, but I find different ways because I just don't want to encourage more of those phone calls because all you need is one. And that you get on a whole nother set of lists that goes, if you wear that guy down, he'll give you money eventually. You never give the money, and eventually you come off the list. You're just not a good target anymore for ransomware. You'll be a target for something else, like they'll attack you, they'll steal your stuff. There's always a new reason to get you, but yeah, don't pay the ransom, but do these other things to be prepared so it's not a problem. If you ransom my endpoint, please don't. Anybody listening, please don't go after me. I'm sure one of you can hack me and make my life miserable. Please don't do it. But if you do, it's an inconvenience. You know what? This laptop next to me, and I got 4 from sitting here right now. Not one of them I can't live without. Not one of them I can't go, well, whatever's on there's gone. I've got air gap data. I got 2 different single terabyte hard drives here. I got a 5 terabyte there. I got cloud storage. I got duplications on duplications, man. I may have a hard time finding my stuff, but I've got it. So you hit my endpoint, I'm wiping my computer. You've cost me a day. You've made me unhappy, and I know some smart people who might go find you and make you unhappy. But you're definitely not going to sink my business. You're not going to find massive, embarrassing things that you're going to steal from me. You're not going to ruin our company. I'm not going to give away a lot of classified information or confidential company information because we're not set up that way. Again, please don't take it as a challenge. Somebody someplace out there is like, I'm going to hack these guys. Please don't. I don't even work in IT security. You're going to make somebody else who's very nice, very unhappy, trying to protect themselves on this case. But my point is, it won't ruin us like it would some companies. You prepare yourself, and same in your personal life. Man, if you can't live without your cell phone, there's problems. I hope you're backing up your stuff someplace. People, you ever see the look on somebody's face when they just can't find their cell phone? It fell on the couch. Like, they haven't even left the house. It's in between the seats. People, and I do it too. People panic. Their whole life is on this phone. I can't live without it. We should be in a position to go, well, it's expensive, but I'll get another one. Also have tracking on your phone or whatever. But it's the same thing. Companies who pay, they didn't do any of the things to prepare themselves. And I don't know if they did it because they were saving money. I don't know if they did it because they didn't recognize the threat. Maybe they didn't have the intel team to inform them. But invariably, the companies that pay could have done something differently previously, but at the time they paid, probably had found that they had very few good options. So they just pay. And sadly, I'm sure there's companies out there who just budgeted at this point as another set of losses, like banks budget credit card fraud as a loss. And that just feeds the industry. If I weren't on this side and I had a lot more brains, I would totally be in the ransomware business. What a great career field if you don't have ethics and you're smart. Technically, what a great career field. I mean, the money that comes out of it, and there's even better ones. Business email compromise. Nobody even talks about that, and that's like 17 times as bad as ransomware. Billions of dollars lost every year in business email compromise because people are just so easy to fool sometimes.
Oh,
so
definitely.
if people say crime doesn't pay, they're lying, man. Crime pays really, really well.
Yeah,
You just got to be willing to take the risk of what bad things might happen and not have a lot of ethics. But
definitely.
it pays, man.
Yeah.
It's all right. This side pays okay too, and I sleep at night, and I'm never gonna have to hopefully be in the 8x6 or whatever the hell they are.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I'm not risking it,
Not
especially
my
if you
place.
you've been in this industry long enough, or you speak to just have
I'm
the
old. I'm
fortunate
old. Just say it. Just say it,
ability.
Eric. I'm old.
Like,
I've been in it a
no,
long time. I got it, man.
my
I
son,
got it.
hey, you see, I got these gray hairs coming in.
Yeah, this used to be dark, man. I tell my girlfriend I wasn't gray before I met her, but I also tell my daughter that. So take your pick. So, man, it's good, man. We got wisdom. Go ahead, man. I interrupted you.
But it, one thing I would say further about ransomware. So first of all, if you've been in this industry long enough and you had a chance to talk to really smart people, you quickly realize I'm probably getting caught. If someone really wants to find me, like
Oh yeah. Oh
I
yeah.
know a couple people. There's been a couple people that I had the fortunate ability, yourself included. Like, hey, if AJ really wanted to find me, could I hide? No. Like I'm
Probably not.
getting caught. But
Yeah.
also to send my last point to an organization, like
Mhm.
if the reason why paying another reason why paying a ransom is absolutely I do not condone it. I understand, just like you, I understand the economics of it, but put this in perspective. If you're a large organization and you pay $100,000, $200,000 ransom, you go ahead and say, "Hey, it's the cost of business. I'm gonna pay
Yep.
this ransom."
Yep.
Think your IT, your cybersecurity, your security team, you now have to pivot everything because you can't pay the ransom and say, okay, we're good now. They're going to leave
No,
us alone.
no,
No, they can do.
no.
They can't. They're going to do the same exact thing and
Hmm.
possibly get you to pay again. And so
Hmm.
think about the cost of pivoting everything. And if your team says we won't have to pivot everything, that is a horrible, horrible move. You need to pivot everything.
Time to look for a new team.
Yeah, and start moving things around, possibly dropping
Hmm.
vendors, bringing new vendors in,
Yep. You got to
because
change everything.
you got to change the environment. Someone picked your lock and stole some things from you,
Yeah.
and so you're like, okay, I locked it now.
Right.
They're going to leave us alone.
Right. And I bought my stuff back. So they know I have the stuff and I have the money to pay for it. I'm not going to change the lock though, man. I locked it. We're good. Yeah, it's it's exactly what people do.
No,
And what a surprise. They come back through that same lock again.
oh, exactly. It's a horrible way to live. One of the last things that I wanted to
Mhm.
talk to you about is an interesting concept that I read I read your article that you produce
Uh-oh.
on. Uh,
Using my work against me. Uh-oh. What did I say?
no, I think it's fair. I think it's interesting, and I would love for other people to hear. It's the idea of creating a new C-level position,
Hmm.
a chief intelligence officer. You
Yeah.
feel so strongly that this about intelligence that you feel this
Hmm.
needs to be a C-level position.
Hmm.
So, could you enlighten us on what this chief intelligence, who would this person be, what would this person do,
Hmm.
and why do you feel this needs to exist?
Yeah, man, I'm glad you got this. I'm glad you mentioned this. You teed me up beautifully, and I didn't know this was coming. This is awesome. So I did write an article. United States Cybersecurity Magazine originally published it. It's been republished other places, and it was called "Rise of the CINO," CINO. So it was the Chief Intelligence Officer. And when it came to it, I worked my way towards this, frankly, with some other pieces and some thinking. But it, our biggest challenge, I think, right now in the industry and almost everywhere still is first organizations don't have intelligence. And then if they do, it's where do they place it? And they take the intel team and they bury it in the SOC. A lot of times below like the director of defensive cyber operations, something like that. Wherever you put intel, that's where they're going to focus. I've talked about stakeholders and priorities. If I'm behind the director of defensive cyber ops, I'm only going to serve whatever his or her needs are, not the global picture, which is a huge problem. It would be the equivalent of taking NSA and putting it under CENTCOM and then being surprised you have no intelligence about Asia or Europe. You're not going to. Like you're going to get nothing but Middle East intelligence is all you get. So I had said that the whoever runs your intel organization probably should report to the CISO, but really that's just the next stepping stone. The truth is, Intel should be a counselor to the CEO. So there's a graphic I whipped up that went with this article that sort of laid out the new org chart that basically said on one side of the CEO, and I hope I get all the C's right here. On one side of the CEO, you've got the chief legal and you got the chief intelligence officer. Those are the conciliaries, I guess. I'm probably pronouncing that terribly. If you speak Italian, I apologize now. Consiglieres, I'm sure I'm screwing it up. They're the counselors for the CEO. The legal obviously keeps you out of jail, helps you with contracts, make sure you guys are following all the right regulations, etc. Intel feeds almost everything. Listen, you want to know about threats? That's great. We do that. You know, physical threats. You want to know about cyber threats? How about M&A? A lot of folks fail to think about Intel and M&A. All they worry about in M&A is how does this other company, if I'm going to acquire them, how do they fit within our portfolio? Do they make us a stronger company? Do we compete with them? You know, do they have any legal issues? Are they under subpoenas? Are they under investigation? You know, how is their profitability, et cetera? And they don't think about things like what kind of risks am I taking on in the cyberspace, and who do they hire, and who's their third party vendor? You know, who are the third party vendors, and where are their facilities located? And I've run into this before, where I've been in companies where after an acquisition happened, we were asked to do the assessment. Well, you're kind of late then and nobody likes to hear it. And we've had to deliver it as teams and say, hey, yeah, this acquisition you've made, you got some problems. Like here's a whole bunch of things you acquired that you may not realize you acquired. I got to give you the bad news. So I think you rise Intel higher, and the mapping I said was similar to the government space. Frankly, you have a DNI, a Director of National Intelligence, which is a position that hasn't existed forever. It was born in my lifetime because we have these 17 agencies. Used to be 16 when I was there, 17 now, and you need somebody to counsel the president at the highest level that has the knowledge, that understands the president's needs. That's your number one stakeholder, the nation's needs. This is the same thing here. The CEO understands the big picture of the company, the only one that does, the only one that understands all the nuances, the roadmap, where are we trying to get to, where are our business interests, what are our risks, what are our potholes, what are our concerns, et cetera. And Intel fits into all of that. Intel can affect your hiring practices and your strategy there. It can affect your, like I said, acquisitions, and obviously all the threat pieces, right? The physical security and executive protection and cybersecurity and insider threat, one that's totally neglected. So you have it at the highest level, and then you actually can do something with it too. You actually have the ability to impact change. A big challenge you have with intelligence, I mentioned some of this. There's you ruffle some feathers. Like, people don't like to be told they're wrong. People don't like to be told somebody knows more than them. It's not meant to be boastful. It's certainly not meant to be braggadocious. Again, I don't think I'm smarter than somebody because I'm the Intel guy. It's just the career field. But sometimes part of the job is to say, hey, we have access to more things than you do. We have a larger, lens, and your assessment's wrong, and you need to make this change for these reasons. Some people don't want to hear that. Well, you can speak truth to power all you want, but it sure helps to actually work for the power. And to be in a position where the CEO says, hey, these folks said it, go do it, execute, as opposed to having to fight your way up the stream the whole time to be able to tell people what they really need to hear and don't want to hear, and risk your job every time you do it. You work for the chief of defensive cyber operations, and you want to help the red team. He's like, it's not my mission. Just worry about my mission. You do it anyway. Now you worry about losing your job because you're trying to help the red team do a better job of building a red team capability to actually test you to make you better, because that's what you should be doing. And to be truthful, this is, again, a lot of it is mapped like the government. I'm certainly influenced by the government space. But a lot of it really got crystallized for me. I don't want to call it too many names, but it got crystallized for me in a position I had where I was leading an Intel team, building an Intel team, and it occurred to me we were just aligned to the wrong place. And how to message that and not be self-serving was nearly impossible, quite frankly. There was no way for me to say, hey, I don't think I should work for you. I think I should work for your boss's boss. That doesn't go over very well. There's never been a time when somebody went, yeah, I think you're right. You really should. In fact, I should work for you. Let's just switch roles. Nobody does that, right? And so if you're objectively just saying where you think things belong, it can be difficult, right? And I've caused problems with it. But I'm like I said, I'm a slave to the truth and what I think is right and what I think is the best way to go. And my job is to give those assessments. I try to treat most of my jobs actually kind of like a consulting gig, in that I'm here to assess what we think we should do and offer what I think is the best answer. Sometimes it's not in my best interest. I had a previous position where I said, I think the best thing to do is to get rid of me. We don't have the resources to do everything we need to do. I think the person, the next couple of people in line here can do this job well enough. You should get rid of me and use my salary to help you get the resources you need. I don't fit. I wasn't fired for saying that, as it turns out, but it was an honest assessment. We don't have the money, and if we can't find the money other way, get rid of me and do something else, and I'll go find something else to do with my time. So anyway, so I think that's the magazine article. So it was originally in United States Cybersecurity Magazine, which is online, and you can register for free and read it there. It's been republished in a few different places. I hope lots of people read it. It got some traction. I was very excited about it. Someplace there's a PhD someplace who said they were going to do a college course based on it. I heard it third hand. It never got back to me. If they've done it without my permission, thanks for making people smarter, but damn, I wish I was involved. But whatever, the idea is to get it out there. I didn't copyright things. Like, I want people to be smarter, and some, really smart people. There's a brilliant guy overseas who's incorporated this into some of his work, another PhD. I work with these people all much smarter than me. And it's gaining traction. Every once in a while, it's amazing you said this, because it's been a month or two, but every once in a while somebody's like, man, I read that article. There's a friend of mine who works for now a competitor, who called me to let me know, hey, I just got promoted, and guess what my new title is? I was like, Chief Intelligence Officer. He's like, yeah. I was like, great. I'm so happy for you. So I am actually happy for him. Great guy. But I think we're starting to see people move in that direction. But it's tough. It also requires a whole lot of people feeling like they're getting stepped over. And Intel's a service. If the CNO works for the CEO, it doesn't mean everybody works for the CNO. The CNO will run the intelligence organizations that serve everybody else, but everybody in the company is a customer. And that, I think, is the position that some folks don't understand when I advocate for this. I'm not advocating for CNO because I want to be in charge. I want to be the boss. It's a service. Believe me, it's just a whole lot more responsibility. I had to clean it up. A whole lot more responsibility. Because now you're saying all these people are customers, and we have to have a large plan and a large strategy on how we're going to serve very different needs: insider threat versus M&A versus HR, versus cybersecurity versus physical security and executive protection. Totally different requirements across the board. So it's a big problem to solve. But you can only do it if you have the full global picture and you have the blessing of the people who really control the pockets and control the priorities. So I mean that's why I believe in it. It's not a power play. I think people who know me probably know that, but I think people who don't might think otherwise. It never has been. I think it's where it belongs. There's a reason this is how it works in the government space. Yeah, ultimately you have to have somebody who can inform the highest levels and give them the right information at the right time to make decisions, then execute things back down. So that's my blurb on it. I'm thrilled you read it. Thanks, and liked it. Apparently,
Yeah.
it still gets good traction occasionally. It's to be honest with you, as I said, I'm Forrest Gumping my way through life. I didn't write that knowing anybody would ever even read it. Like I was lucky enough that United States Cybersecurity Magazine wanted me to publish something. I've published several with them now. They're great people, and every time I'm surprised anybody reads anything. Every time somebody says, "Man, it's a great article. I'm glad you wrote it." I'm like, I'm stunned anybody reads anything I write. But I'm happy that's gaining traction, and I hope someday it's a norm. Just like every other C position, Intel is seen as really an enabler of all these other positions. And it's a team game, but we're in good position to help people make better decisions, and that's what the service is. That's what our job is.
Yeah, I I read it and I really really enjoy it. It's one of those things where you read and you're like, why I didn't think of that? Like why this hasn't why is this not a thing? And you begin to see the flaws in kind of every other place you've been without it. Like, oh, like this is why certain things aren't moving forward, why we got caught flat-footed here. Because M&A, as you said, it's huge. It's huge. It's when you're most vulnerable.
Oh, totally.
To be honest, like, hey, you're bringing in an outside organization, you're
Hmm.
bringing them in the the most intrusive way possible. Like you're inheriting absolutely everything, and uh, from cyber threats to M&A to just various business risks that exist out there. To think and know like there's no one leading that in most organizations that I've seen that I've worked for. It's just like wow, like that is a problem. And so I appreciate that you wrote it because I read it and I was one of those things. I'm like, oh my gosh, like how is this the first time I'm hearing about this? Because it's
Well, thanks, man.
so
That is high
obvious.
praise, especially when somebody as knowledgeable and educated, because they're separate things, as you are. Like, listen, I'll take praise from
Appreciate it.
anybody. I love when somebody says they like something I did. I'm a child, so you pat me on the back if I can make you laugh or you said I did good work. I'm giddy. But when it comes from somebody with the experience, with the knowledge, with the education of you, I'm like, oh man, I actually did something good. Like I felt good about it when I wrote it. Obviously, I believe it and I'm passionate. But I was just as likely to have people go, man, this guy's an idiot. And I had no idea. People are like, shut up. And part of the challenge and one of the things I called out in the paper was you got to get past the politics. Again,
Oh
forgetting
yeah.
the people getting ruffled over just the word intelligence. Right? There's politics in almost every company and every organization. Most people at some level, when they get high enough up, their goal is to build an empire. They want to build security, they want to build power, they want to build control. Maybe they have good intentions. They're not all evil people, but people start becoming empire builders. And you run into so many obstacles. So I've consulted a lot. I've done some of it myself, but also consulted a lot of places where you're helping build Intel programs. And you see people actively working as Intel program who may not even realize why they're doing it, but they're actively working against the Intel program. And if you don't have enough executive authority, obviously you want to build consensus. It's team. It is service. I will tell you, if you're trying to build an Intel program, all you do is piss everybody off. You're going to get fired. Like it is a service, and if customers don't want to work with you, if you don't have any customers, so you have to find a way to build relationships. But sometimes the intractable one, you just have to bump them out of the way. There's no way around it. Somebody just has to come in and go, listen, I know you don't like this. You're gonna have to trust me on this, and if you don't, you can go find something else to do, whatever it takes. But we're moving forward with this. And a lot of folks building Intel programs can't. Even when they decide they want to, they take some junior person and go, okay, well, you're in charge of Intel. The worst thing I see happen, and happens all the time, is they take somebody who's really good at incident response and go, Bob's a great manager. People love him. He knows his business. He's great at incident response. Bob, we're going to promote you to director. You're the director of intelligence. You're the director of CTI, which is a term I also hate. There's a whole lot of other terminology out there. I've written other articles on the death of CTI if you want to read that. But you're the director of CTI. Build us an intel program. And then Bob tries to read everything he can to understand what intel is because he's not an intel guy. And I promise you, Bob's going to hire 12 more Bobs and build another incident response program. And in 18 months, Bob's going to be fired along with his whole team because they didn't build an intel program because they were never trained to do so. It wasn't their job. They didn't know how. But people have a really hard time building the program, building the need, building the understanding, getting the messaging right, and then getting past the empire builders who don't want to be told what to do. They don't want to change. They don't want to be told you know more than I do. Listen, I just have more access than you do, man. That's just how it works. And there's some people who just are really hard to work with sometimes in those areas, and that tends to go away when it comes from the top down. I don't want it to have to be that way. But you want to be efficient. You want to get things done. You want to break down silos is another one. People don't want to work with each other. These orgs don't work with each other. They got their own processes and systems. Well, okay, you can't anymore. Well, who are you? Like, you just work in defensive cyber ops. I don't have to listen to you. Okay, well, we're going to fail. Like, we're all going to get hacked eventually. Here's all the problems that are going to happen unless we fix the system. But yeah, I'll go back to my desk now. No problem. It's cool. I'll write up my report for the boss, who also won't read it probably. And then I'll wait to see what happens when things go bad. So the more we empower and enable the Intel team and the higher we rise that team, and I know people aren't dying to jump to CINO, and that's cool. Man, just get your Intel team to report to your CISO. Like, I'd be thrilled if more Intel teams just report to the CISO. It'd be a great start. And if you got to hire higher ranking people to make that happen so it fits within the org structure, fine, hire that. Spend the money on the former NSA chief of whatever. Hire the right people. But you got to elevate Intel. You got to show you really mean it. It's not just, we're going to say the thing. You got to know what Intel is. Hire somebody who knows Intel. Stop hiring brilliant tech people and calling them your Intel person. Like, that's how it works. My dentist is amazing, but he's not working on my car. Like, he's not a mechanic. Like, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Great dentist. My doctor's, really good as a general practitioner. He's not going to do brain surgery on me. So it's okay. Be good at what you're good at. Hire people who are good at what they're good at. And respect that these are different things. So I hope it keeps gaining traction. Again, I'm flabbergasted that you read it and that you thought so highly of it. It's good to know. I appreciate it. I keep trying to write more good, smart things occasionally, and I got to find more time to write more things, I guess, because people like you read them.
Yeah.
But then eventually tell me when I write a bad one, because I know I have. They aren't all winners. Nobody's hitting them out of the park with every time. So listen, if I've been dribblers to shortstop for ground balls, feel free to let me know that part too. But no, man, I appreciate it. I hope it goes further. It's gone around the world. It's amazing some of the feedback I've gotten on it. I fear I've probably done the best work of my life now, and I don't know what I'm going to do next. But I keep trying to write things, but nothing's quite as good so far.
No, you did fantastic. You did fantastic work, and I'm sure there's more coming out of it. No,
I hope so.
That's fair. That's great. So being the Mic Club,
Yep.
we got to spend a few moments talking about diversity or in cybersecurity. And
Totally.
so I'm curious your thoughts and what there might be a few individuals that are thinking like, hey, I want to build a intelligence team. Like, all right, maybe we can start with two.
Yep.
And you seem to have done so. You've built some great teams. How are you attracting not just teams, but you're attracting diverse teams and retaining diverse teams?
Yeah, it's a good point. So I think first we've got there's a lot of people that talk about diversity because they think it's the thing they're supposed to talk about. If you're one of those people, just stop. Like, just admit you don't care about diversity and get out of the way, in my opinion. Like, it's fine. Go build a team full of white guys doing white guy things all the time. I'm a white guy, I get it. But let's stop pretending. Like, I'm tired of people who say it because it's the new thing and they want people to like, yes, we believe in diversity. And then you check all the stats and it's like, yeah, you hired 5 white guys and one of them was almost white. Like, whatever. You didn't change anything, right? Diversity to me is that this guy had blue hair, blue eyes instead of brown eyes. That's not diversity. So, but the key piece to it to me is there's just massive power in it. Listen, even if you don't believe in it, and there's a lot of reasons you should not go down that path. The fact of the matter is, we're all better for it. The Intel just works better in my case. I talk about Intel. I want to hire people from as many diverse cultural backgrounds as possible, from as many genders as possible. People who think differently from one another. You obviously want to have them trained. We want them to think the same about how to do intel and the importance there. But beyond that, you and I are a good example, right? If you and I looked at a problem, we're going to see it differently. We have different life experiences. We have different educational backgrounds. You're more technical than I am. I've spent some time in the agency, and listen, I'm a white guy. I have different experiences. You're a black guy. You have different experiences, but those are positive. These are beneficial. There's nothing wrong with saying that. You're going to see things differently, and there's a very good chance you're going to see something I couldn't have seen ever, and it might be the thing, right? So to me, it's really important, not as a show or whatever. It just is. It makes us all better. Yes, there's the human piece. Listen, I think we should do better by each other. Obviously, that's important. But even if you don't care about people and you just care about efficiency and doing the best job, then you want diversity for that, because groupthink doesn't give you good answers. You get 10 guys that look just like me and come from the places I come from, you're going to get the same answer over and over again. When we're right, we're all going to be really, really right. But when we're wrong, we're all going to be really, really wrong. Whereas if you have diversity, and then you have to empower everybody in that group. Like, diversity doesn't work if you have a dominant person who decides everything anyway. People have to be able to speak and be heard, and you have to empower them. And I personally, I was lucky. I was Air Force growing up, so unlike some other Air Force intel, no less. So I was raised in a unit where it didn't matter what your rank was. Like, the right answer is the right answer. And so you just did it. So I remember being, an airman at one point and having a disagreement with a major. And I was allowed to have that disagreement. And because it was about Serbian and Croatian and I spoke the language and they didn't, there was a good chance I was going to be right. And I was. But the key piece is everybody has to be empowered, and you have to listen to everybody. It could be the most junior person who has the brilliant answer. If only the people with rank get to speak, if only the people with whatever skin tone you bias toward get to speak, or whatever education you agree with get to speak, then don't hire the other people. You're wasting their time. Diversity means putting as many different possible perspectives, educated, trained, and appropriate, into the position, and then giving them all the opportunity to make their voice heard, and you get the best intel out of it. And the agencies know this, man. We do that at the agencies. Diverse teams do better. I know I got a friend of mine who says I love to hire musicians for intel. Which is because musicians just think differently. I know people who like artists. I know people who hire journalists. I know people with all sorts of different backgrounds. They have to have the training to understand the intelligence piece, of course. But beyond that, everything else is what you bring to the table. And I'm also a really big believer in authenticity. Be who you are. It took me a long time to get there, man. You can't sell everything I'm wearing right now. Generally speaking, my outfit's almost always the same. It's going to be blue jeans, cowboy boots, a graphic T-shirt, and an unbuttoned flannel of some kind with the sleeves rolled up. And I do that whether I'm on stage. I do that when I'm talking to CEOs. I do that when I'm on the plane. I do that when I'm at the grocery store. It's just who I am. And when I went to Japan, people's eyes, my colleagues freaked out the first morning I went to breakfast because you wear suits and ties in Japan. And I said, I didn't even pack a suit and tie. It wasn't meant to be insulting. And I had a great time in the Japanese. I know their customs and was very respectful, I think, at least. And we had a great time. But if you can bring your whole self, everybody's better for it. I tell people, we get on Zoom, everybody's doing this now, right? Oh, my kid's crying. Go ahead, take care of your kid. Bring him on screen. Let's talk. I don't care. Like, your puppy's here. If you're sick, take the day off, take half a day, whatever you need. Just bring yourself and be who you are. We're all going to be better for it. And places, listen, you want to talk about retention? Treat people like that. Watch how much they want to stick around. I'll tell anybody, listen, if somebody gets a 20, 30, 40% raise and they quit the team, I get it. I can't compete with that. If somebody ever leaves for 5 or 10 grand, it's me. I'm a terrible leader and I should do a better job. Nobody changes their life over 5 or 10 grand unless they're making 5 or 10 grand. But in our position, nobody changes their life over 5 or 10 grand. It's not life changing. It means that they're unhappy. But if you build the right environment, people have the opportunity to be heard. You get better intel, you get better results, you get more retention, you get better morale. People want to work with you. People want to work for you, eventually, and you get the right reputation for that. But only if you're genuine, only if you really care about it. Otherwise, just pound, just be a dinosaur and go away. That's you're not gonna be around much longer. The world is not white men, like, period. It's just not. And if people haven't figured that out, and as a white guy, I can say that if people haven't figured that out yet, You're living on borrowed time. All right, the future is not the white guy. The future is everybody. We have our place, just like everybody else does, but the future is not the white guy. And we're getting better as we get more. God, I love when we get smart women into the team. They bring so much that guys could never bring to the table. Just totally different life experience, right? Um, again, you and I would think differently. Pick a culture, pick a background, pick a religion, pick a race, whatever it is. Everybody brings something really cool and interesting, and they see things that you just don't see otherwise. So I couldn't say enough about it. I'm frustrated on teams I've been on where I haven't been able to build enough diversity. Part of the problem is that the pool of candidates is often just not enough. You put on an opportunity, and you get 40 candidates, and it's like, well, listen, man, I only got like 5 qualified, and they all happen to be white dudes. Like, let's keep looking for a little longer, but I also have to fill the position. And I'm not going to hire somebody just for a diversity hire. That's insulting to the person. That doesn't do us any good. That's not diversity. That's bullshit. Don't do that. Let's work on growing more opportunities to have a more diverse candidate pool to begin with. And that part I find frustrating sometimes is finding the right people. But we're getting more as we go forward. There's a pipeline coming. There's millions of open jobs to be filled. We need to do it. You're doing it here. And I told you, before we got on the air, like, I'm thrilled you're doing this. Anybody who has the opportunity to spread knowledge to communities that aren't traditionally seen as part of the cybersecurity or the tech community is going to make us better. We need to grow more. I've worked with a professor at James Madison University, and she and I worked on some academic stuff with JMU, and I worked with Robert Morris University. But she was making connections with historically Black colleges and universities, and we were working on building a pilot program to do some more work there. I hope that's continuous with the previous company. I think that's the kind of thing we need to do. We need to drive this forward fast, like just real fast. So I hope I'm doing enough. I'm not. Like, I got more work to do on my team as well. But we're cognizant and we're trying. Like, we're always trying to get the voices.
Wow, I love that, and I applaud you and thank you for the part that you're doing, because I love it. Love that you say the future is everybody. That's so powerful, and so thank you for being here. Thank you for
Mhm.
taking taking the opportunity to share your knowledge and your opinions, and coaching us up on this unique topic of intelligence. And thank you, anyone that's watching that's made it this far to the end. Down below, as always, feel free, comment down there with things that you thought were interesting, whether you agree, whether you disagree. Um, totally, you have two people here that's married to the truth, and we understand that. Hey, you might argue some points here and there. Please do. We could iron sharpens iron. We can only get better if we have a conversation. And I encourage everyone, take part of this conversation. If you're in a tech role, take part of this conversation, take it to work, and let's help use this to help better your organization. If you feel there's anything in here worth value, and as always, thank you so much. I'm Dr. Erik Huffman from the Mike Club. I'll catch you all on the next one. Peace.